What can people do to resist the tide?
People have to try not to succumb to certain tribal instincts, any kind of propaganda that denote the other as some kind of subhuman. It's been part of the imperial playbook since the Romans to divide and conquer, and it's working now to an astonishing extent. Now, bizarrely, Black Lives Matter and others in that movement are pushing for a kind of segregation.
Praise be Jesus Christ. This is Father Robert McTague of the Society of Jesus, your daily host for the Catholic Current, where we bring Christ to the world and the world to Christ. You're listening to us from the Station of the Cross Studios, your local radio station, and the iCatholic Radio mobile app, where we proclaim the fullness of truth with clarity and charity. As always, let's start with prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Almighty God, through the intercession of St. Ignatius Loyola, we ask that you pour forth your Holy Spirit upon us, a spirit of discernment, who might hear your voice and obey your command. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. You know, friends, Mark Twain said, everyone complains about the weather. No one does anything about it. Nowadays, everyone seems to be complaining about the economy and big tech. I have two guests who will talk to us about how we can push back and even find good news. You want to stay with us for the whole hour in the second half of the show? I am going to meet Aron Wagner. He's COO and co-founder of Right Forge. He's going to be talking about discussing big tech. My guest for the first half of the show is a senior advisor for strategy for the Trump 2020 campaign and currently hosts an evening show on Newsmax TV. Steve Cortes, welcome back to the Catholic Current.
Hey, Father, thank you so much for having me.
Steve, when I was a boy, I lived a very common story. My dad was a blue-collar worker who came home at the end of the day with his black metal lunchbox. Mom stayed at home. We had a house. We had a 4-bedroom house. We had a car, and we had a week-long vacation at the Jersey Shore every summer. And where I grew up, that was normal and it was not impossible. For the longest time, though, it seemed that it was impossible. What happened?
Right. No, Father, and by the way, I'm the same. Grew up in a very middle-class home, and my parents were able to raise 6 children on one income. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, a homemaker. And again, as you say, that was the norm. Not all that long ago. You know, we're not that old. This wasn't the way old days, but it did go away, unfortunately, for most middle-class families. And to answer your question, why did it go away? I believe primarily through globalization, through the idea that global trade was going to enrich America by providing us with cheap goods. Now, it did provide us with cheap goods, particularly from China over the last 30 years. However, at tremendous expense to the manufacturing base of the United States and to wages. You know, if you look at real wages in the United States, they have basically been stagnant for working class people since the 1970s. They rose dramatically during President Trump's term for the first 3 years, from 2017, 18, and 19, before the China virus hit the United States. They were rising very dramatically, but that was really that was the outlier period. For most of the last 50 years, workers' wages, working class wages, have been stagnant in this country. And I believe the primary reason is predatory trade practices from China. It's not that we can't compete with other countries in the world on a fair sort of apples to apples basis. It's that we have been manipulated and exploited in global trade, and globalization worked very well for the ruling classes of the United States. It's been great for the C-suites of massive corporations. It's been great for lobbyists on K Street in Washington, D.C. It has decimated working class people, and it has forced a lot of middle class families into a situation where, to maintain their lifestyle or a semblance of their lifestyle, they suddenly need 2 incomes instead of 1. And here's the thing. If families want to make that choice, Father, if they believe that they should have 2 parents working, you know, so be it. That is their choice for them to make. What I am advocating for is let's return to policies that can empower families, if they want to make the choice to have 1 earner, whether it's the man or the woman. In most cases, it will be the man. But again, that's not for me to determine. That's for families to decide. My point is, there are policies that we can put in place, policy reforms that will, again, make possible for American families the reality of being able to live a solid middle-class life on a single income. And the polling overwhelmingly shows us that is what families want, and that is what women want, by the way, as well.
Friends, I'm speaking with Steve Cortes of Newsmax TV. We're talking about his recent article in the National Pulse called Welcoming Back the Traditional One-Income Family. Steve, when I was in college in the 80s, the early to mid 80s, there were a lot of young ladies with T-shirts, and it had kind of this Dr. Seuss style illustration, and it said, "A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." Now, for
Right.
that attitude had tremendous impact. That rippled out in every direction, and that's another many topics for many other times. But it seems to me that the narrative that we were told growing up was no sane woman, no healthy woman wants to spend a lot of time with her inner home and with her children, and that you need to outsource the education and even the raising of your children to the professionals so that you can have the freedom to work in the workplace. And again, we're not talking about or what's the Handmaid's Tale. We're not talking about that at all. We're talking about if people do want to stay home and have that traditional one income family, they really should have that option. You've been looking at some research to say that this isn't just wishful thinking of two cave dwelling traditionalists. Who is it that really wants to have the opportunity to have that choice?
Right.
What do
Well,
the numbers show?
sure. And let me get specific here with some of the numbers and the polling. Yeah, exactly. To show you that, this isn't just men telling women what to do, right? Again, I want to empower women. I want to empower families to make their own choices. And the polling, and I'll give you the numbers here, the polling show us that the majority of families, and the vast majority in the case of working class families, are going to make the choice to go back to the kind of childhood that you and I both had, Father, which is on a single income. And to be specific here, Gallup poll, which was just recently taken of parents who have a child under 18, 18 or under, the majority of women, a solid majority, 56%, said they prefer a full homemaker role, a full-time at-home role. That is what Gallup poll shows us. When we go to working class people, which is actually quite interesting. This is from American Compass, this poll, which I detail in my article. Among working class Americans, 71% of parents, now they're polling both men and women, but these are parents, 71% say they do not want both parents working full-time. They either want a parent home full-time or only working part-time. 71% do not want what is the current norm in America, right? They're saying we are unhappy with the status quo of both parents working full-time. 71% of working class people say they do not want that. Interestingly, Father, a majority of people, because this American Compass poll breaks it down demographically, people with advanced degrees, they do want both people working full-time. So the ruling class elites of America, okay, they actually are fine with the idea of outsourcing care of their children. They want both the father and mother working full time. And again, look, I personally don't agree with that life choice, but that's their choice to make. Fine. But the point is, working class people who don't have the option right now, most of them, to have one to maintain their lifestyle on one income, they overwhelmingly 71% of them tell us that this is the lifestyle they want. So you mentioned the T-shirts you would see on college campuses. Those choices, people tell us, again, it's not my opinion, people tell us those choices are making them deeply unhappy. It is not the lifestyle they want. It's a lifestyle that they feel forced into. And what I'm saying is there is public policy that in large part is driving that reality. We can change those policies so that we can allow families to return to an era of living a comfortable life, not being, not a lavish life, but living a comfortable life on a single income. I think it is a worthy goal. It's one we don't talk enough about, I think, unfortunately. And those of us, people like me, who are activists in the America First movement, I think we need this a priority, because I will tell you this, Father, I think that the candidates or the political movement that figure this out, that can enunciate this goal, deliver on it for working class people, I think that movement will dominate American politics for decades to come. I really do.
Steve, I'm a longtime humanities major. I'm not a policy wonk. I'm not a numbers cruncher. But my perception is that policies have been actually disincentivizing the starting of families and the creating of small businesses for a long time. Do you think that perception is accurate?
100%. And I think that's been the case for decades in the United States, and it has massively accelerated since the pandemic, because of COVID, which so rewarded big business, right? Big tech never had it so good. Millions and millions of Americans stuck at home on their screens, ordering their things online rather than going to the local store or the local bodega. Fantastic for Amazon, for Microsoft, for Apple, for Netflix. Terrible for small business. Big box retailers stayed open, Costco and Walmart, while small retailers were closed. So small business unfortunately, has been crushed. And regarding family formation and the birth rate, we don't have to guess. We can see the birth rate in the United States is now the lowest it has been since the Great Depression. That's terrible news for this country. Look, a healthy society, a healthy, confident, vibrant society loves children, welcomes children, has a high birth rate. The United States, for a long time, had by far the highest birth rate of any industrial nation in the world. And that was in my view, that was a great barometer of American success and of American optimism. We were very different from Japan and Europe. Unfortunately, though, we're reverting to mean. We are now descending to the point where our birth rate is starting to look a lot more like the birth rate of Italy and Spain and Japan. Again, countries where we used to be very exceptional. We used to have a far higher birth rate than them. But again, too, I also think here that there are a lot of components. There's obviously a spiritual component, a cultural component. I'm mostly focused, just because this is sort of my lane, on the economic component of it.
Right.
And we have made it difficult, again, in so many ways, to have children, particularly to have a lot of children.
Right. The future belongs to those who show up, and if you choose not to show up, then there is no reason to hope. Friends, when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Steve Cortes of Newsmax Television. We're talking about how to facilitate one-income families again. It's actually what people want. After the broadcast today, go to thestationofthecross.com, get our resources list, download our audio as podcast. Our rallying cry here at the Catholic Current is Christus Mundo, Mundus Christo, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ. We do it because our Lord says so, for the greater glory of God, the love of our neighbor, and the salvation of our own soul. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The Catholic Current with Father Robert Matej from the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. Stay connected with the show, our guests and topics, by following the show on Twitter and Gab. Just search for The Catholic Current.
Praise be Jesus Christ. This is Father Robert Matej of the Society of Jesus, your daily host for the Catholic Current, where we bring Christ to the world and the world to Christ. You're listening to us from the Station of the Cross Studios, your local radio station, and the iCatholic Radio mobile app, where we proclaim the fullness of truth with clarity and charity. I'm talking now with Steve Cortes of Newsmax. We're talking about a recent article he wrote for the National Pulse, talking about how people actually want single-income families again. You'll want to stay with us for the whole hour, because in the second half of the show, I'll be meeting up with Aron Wagner of Right Forge to talk about pushing back against big technology. Steve, I think we've agreed it's not by accident that what you and I grew up with, one-income family that people actually wanted, were happy with, and flourished. People want again now. It didn't happen by accident that it went away. It's not going to come back by accident. You make some recommendations to help empower families to live on a single income again. What are they? Walk us through those, please.
Sure, happy to. And just, if I could first, in terms of the goal, where do we want to get? We want to get, again, to a place where families can make this choice. Now, not every family will make that choice, of course, but I want them to be able to make the choice to live a middle-class life off of one income. And I end my article, before I get into the specifics, if I could, I end my article with a quote from G.K. Chesterton, who is my favorite author.
Yes.
And he said this: "The most extraordinary thing in the world is an ordinary man and an ordinary woman and their ordinary children." I think that's a very accurate quote. That is the most extraordinary thing in the world. So how do we get there? How do we enable American families to be extraordinary again, where it is ordinary for them to have one income? Well, I lay out in my article 4 ways to do that. The first, I think, is education choice. Because far too many families are trapped in failing monopolistic government school systems right now. They do not have the option that wealthy people have of going to private schools, to religious schools. And I really believe that our tax dollars are going to funding corrupt systems rather than, particularly teachers' unions, rather than funding children. We should fund children and families and their education. I believe if we do that, families will be encouraged to, number one, have more children, knowing that those tax dollars will be there to give them education choice. But number two, I think it is more likely that a parent, in most cases the mother, will be apt to stay home if she doesn't believe, or the parents don't believe, that they have to make a lot of money to send them to a private school to have education choice. So that, I think, is number one. I just think that's a winning issue. I also think, even outside of family formation and family life, education choice, I believe, is really the civil rights issue of the 2020s, because we are just failing a lot of middle class and lower income kids in America who are not prepared to be productive citizens of our country in a digital age because of their failing public school systems. And then number two I lay out is financial incentives. And I think here we can learn a lot from Eastern Europe. Many countries there are giving incentives to have children, particularly Hungary. In Hungary right now, a married woman can take out a loan of about $30,000. That loan is forgiven as she has children. By the time she has the third child, the loan is erased. If she is married with a fourth child, she's exempt from income tax for life.
Wow.
And these financial incentives are working. Hungary had a terrible birth rate, like most of the Eastern Bloc countries. There was a soullessness, unfortunately, that affected those countries under the communist repression. Their birth rate plunged. It was one of the lowest in the world. It's still low, by the way, Father, but it is upticking dramatically, largely because of these policies. And what I advocate for in this article is, in the United States right now, we have a $3,600 per child tax credit. I think that is good news, but it's not nearly enough given the cost of raising children. I think there should be a $10,000 deduction at least per child, tax deduction off of the parents' taxes. I think the financial incentives would really matter. And then my third proposal is trade protection and offshoring protection. So protectionism has become sort of a dirty word within the Republican Party in recent decades. I want to try to reverse that, because I believe that families and workers do need protection against predatory trade practices, particularly those of the Chinese Communist Party, which has used and manipulated America's trade generosity and openness to abuse American businesses, where they are not necessarily even interested in profit. They're only interested in market share. And because of that, they have decimated industries in the United States, particularly manufacturing. So I believe that the Republican Party, the America First movement, should stand up for protection against trade abuse. And number two, related to that, offshoring. Companies should be punished significantly for offshoring production. For example, right now, if a company moves its production outside the United States and starts to make substantial revenues from that production somewhere else, and it does not repatriate the capital, it doesn't bring it back here, it pays no taxes on it. I'm saying we need to tax those revenues. We need to tax those profits, whether or not they repatriate them. There needs to be disincentives to moving production offshore. And then the fourth proposal, and this is probably the most controversial that I lay out, but I believe in it, is immigration control. I really believe that in terms of raising wages for American workers to the point where a family can live on one income, a big part of that is going to be restricting the workforce in the United States. The foreign-born population. Now, look, I'm a son of an immigrant. My father came to this country from Latin America. I love legal immigration, but I also believe that we as American citizens have a right to determine the level of immigration that's appropriate and the filters by which we select who does come into the United States. Right now, the foreign-born population of the United States is nearly 14%. That is near the all-time high, which was 14.8% in the late 1800s. But back then, when we had 14.8%, America had no government social safety net at all. It was literally, Father, just sink or swim for new migrants. In addition, assimilation back then, it was expected, and frankly, it was enforced. So neither scenario exists today. In other words, we now have a very generous social safety net, and increasingly, immigrants to the United States are not assimilating into American life and into American culture. As evidence of this, I would point to California, which is the most migrant-heavy state in America. It is also the highest poverty state in America. I think that would surprise a lot of people. They would probably, it's West Virginia or maybe a southern state. The highest poverty state, according to the Census Bureau, when you adjust for cost, which is the right way to do it, the highest poverty state in America is California. And I would suggest that at least part of that is because they have accepted too many migrants too quickly. So I also believe that it is time to restrict immigration. I believe for the near term, an immigration pause is in order. After this pandemic, I think America should heal in all ways. It should heal physically, but also socially, economically. Let's take a pause from legal immigration. Again, I'm not anti-immigrant. I want to take a pause and figure it out how to do it better so that it serves the citizens of the United States. But I think, I mentioned globalization. Globalization isn't just about trade. It's also the fact that we have welcomed in the United States a massive influx of immigrants, both legal and illegal, and that has been part of what has depressed wages in recent decades. I believe if we start to restrict that, if we get serious about stopping illegal immigration entirely, and if we get smarter about legal immigration, I think that will raise wages significantly for American citizens and allow families to live on one income again.
Steve, I want to lean into the immigration issue. In religious communities that I spend time with, it's a very sensitive issue. I know one religious community with which I have some familiarity has started a program called UndocuJoy about the wonders of getting in more people into the country illegally. I'm told that, but we're a nation of immigrants. I'm also told that assimilation is bad and racist, and that you've got folks coming and doing jobs that Americans won't do. And so those are the usual arguments against your recommendations regarding immigration control. How do you respond to those?
Sure. Well, first on the racism argument, because I think that's probably the most potent argument that the left uses when it pushes for porous borders or lax migration. I would really say they're for open borders, but they wouldn't use that term. But regardless, look, there's nothing racial about protecting the United States. We are a multiracial democracy. As a matter of fact, I would argue that we are the greatest example for the world of a multiracial country that operates with great comity. Now, is it perfect? Of course not. And will there always be racism in a fallen world? Yes, sadly there will be. But there is no systemic racism in the United States. There's nothing in our laws, nothing prevailing in our culture in this day and age of 2021 that is systemically or in any way structurally racist. So actually protecting the citizens of the United States means protecting Americans regardless of their color, protecting their prosperity, their physical health. Our culture has nothing to do with color. America is not a race. We are a country, and we happen to be very, very diverse at that. So there's no racial component here. By the way, people who claim that America is racist, I interestingly point to illegal migration and legal. It's fascinating that millions and millions of people from around the world, Father, clamor to get into the United States, and they're not all from Norway. Okay, they're not all lily white. So
Right.
Lots and lots, millions of dark-skinned people from Latin America and Asia and Africa, they are dying to come to the United States. If we were the systemically racist country the left claims we are, why in the world would they ever want to come here? So I think that that notion is folly in and of itself. But I would also say this in terms of the jobs, because this is a crucial point on the economy. That and I hear this a lot: jobs Americans won't do. It's jobs Americans won't do at current wages. In other words, because we have probably north of 20 million illegal migrants in the United States. The Democrats often try to claim it's about 10 or 11 million. Two studies done, one by Yale, one by MIT, not exactly conservative institutions. They both say that the number is well north of 20 million. So north of 20 million illegal migrants, most of whom, not all, but most of whom are low skilled and are occupying menial jobs in the United States, competing against Americans of middle and lower income levels. They are depressing those wages. So my point is, Father, listen, I'm a fairly educated and professional man. Okay, now is there a job? Is there a price at which I would perform agricultural work? Yes, there is. There is. I mean, I would go and perform. Right now, that price for me is very, very high. Okay, to be sure, but the point is there is a price at which I would do it. And if you take that example, that might seem like an extreme example, but if you take that for regular working class folks, there is a wage at which, yes, the incentives become enough that they will go and do those jobs. So I think it's a bit demeaning and insulting, really, to Americans to say, they just won't do this work, period. It's no, at the wage which is offered, which I would argue is artificially depressed, largely because of the fact that the United States has had de facto open borders, or at least porous borders, if I'm going to be slightly more diplomatic, porous borders for decades in this country, and particularly right now under Joe Biden.
Steve, we've got a minute left. What's your advice for a traditionally minded person who may be thinking of running for office?
Well, number one, please do it. Right? I mean, we need brave people to stand up. And by the way, regarding this issue specifically of one parent or one income families, again, there's at least two people I know of who are really focusing on this issue, running for Senate: J.D. Vance in Ohio, Blake Masters in Arizona. They are making this part of their platform. So people are standing up and recognizing this issue. So I would encourage them to please be brave, to please get involved. There are a lot of people out there who are afraid to speak on these kinds of issues because they'll be called a sexist or a retrograde or, Handmaid's Tale, you have it. But just please be brave, pray about it, discern about it, be brave and get out there and make the case. And again, we're not telling people how to live their lives. We're trying to give them the freedom to make these choices.
Amen. We want to give people real options. And I think the options we're recommending history shows are healthy, wholesome, and are good really for everyone. There are no losers in giving people the options we're discussing. Steve Cortes, Newsmax TV, thanks for being a splendid guest. I look forward to our next conversation.
You bet. Thank you, Father.
Stay with us for the rest of the hour. Aron Wagner, he's COO and co-founder of RightForge, is coming to talk with us about how to push back against big technology. After the broadcast today, go to thestationofthecross.com, get our resources list, download our audio as podcast. Wherever you can find audio, you can find us. Follow on the channel, write a 5-star review. We need to attract the attention of the algorithms so that these conversations get the attention they deserve. Take it to your family and friends. Together, we'll take it around the world. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Please do stay with us. This is Jesuit Father Robert McTeigue, your daily host on the Catholic Current. Join me on Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern for our next installment in a series called Let's Talk About This. We'll take a close look at a big problem. Should you leave the church, change the church, or fix the church? There's a lot of wrong answers out there, and I'll help you find them and refute them. That's this Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Catholic Current, coming to you from the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
This is the Catholic Current from the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. Catch up on an episode you've missed or share them with your family or friends. The Catholic Current is podcasted wherever you enjoy listening: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
Praise be Jesus Christ. This is Father Robert McTeigue of the Society of Jesus, your daily host for the Catholic Current, where we bring Christ to the world and the world to Christ. You're listening to us from the Station of the Cross Studios, your local radio station, and the iCatholic Radio mobile app, where we proclaim the fullness of truth with clarity and charity. I think we need to talk about technology. I think we need to talk about big tech. And to help me with that, my guest is Aron Wagner. He is the COO of RightForge, a full-service technology infrastructure company dedicating to keep America connected and free, and he served in the 82nd Airborne Division in Iraq. Aron Wagner, welcome to the Catholic Current.
Yeah, hi, Father. Thanks for having me on.
Aron, the big tech has a role in our lives at a scope that's unimaginable. I remember when Amazon just sold books back in the late 90s. I've been using Amazon since 1997, and for a while it looked like Amazon wasn't going to make it and might go out of business. Obviously, things have changed. Facebook has metastasized beyond all coherence. Google might be even bigger than the two of them combined. They overlap, and they seem to be, I don't know, their own country, their own center of gravity, their own source of law and meaning and purpose. And it's like bad science fiction from the 1950s. Resistance is futile. And it seems that recent attempts to even have an intelligent conversation about the role of big technology in our lives either gets shouted down, dismissed. Lawsuits have been peremptorily dismissed by federal courts. How concerned should we be about this?
Yeah, so, it's interesting there's a few points there, right, where when I look at this and I think back, I'm very appreciative of all the technologies that have been able to come to light over the past 20 years. And, I have a lot of gratitude to, live in a world where technology is highly available. But on the other side of that coin, like you were alluding to, is now we have these big tech giants who are, creating themselves into these autocracies and these online governments. And they're not really, having to follow the laws of the land the rest of us have to follow because of, either certain protections that have stayed in place for too long and it's available to them.
When you say certain protections have been available too long, what do you mean by that?
Well, Section 230 was initially created to, protect innovation on the internet and to allow the internet to become exceptional. And I think what we've seen recently is that, at this point, the internet is everything, right? It's in my watch, it's in my doorbell. I have friends that have it in their barbecue grills in their backyards. It's literally almost in everything at this point. So the same laws that apply to everything else should now apply to the internet, because it's no longer exceptional. It just is.
Right. It seems to be pervasive in a way that it's hard for people to imagine what life was like before that. I remember cashing checks in person and not having a debit card, but those memories are kind of vague. Um, and I think the internet grew in a way that no one could have imagined or anticipated. And now it seems to throw a tremendous amount of weight around. And yet attempts at regulation or even intelligent conversation have failed. Why is that?
Yeah, well, regulation is tough. And, I come from a military background, and I spent, a handful of years in a massive bureaucratic environment. And, I'm not holding my breath for any regulation, because I know firsthand that it takes a lot of layers and a lot of steps and a lot of people to sign on for anything to actually get done. So that's
Hmm.
where, I've been talking with other entrepreneurs and innovators and like-minded individuals who agree that there is a free market solution here, where we can, and my company has created, competition where these technologies are no longer incredibly hard to stand back up. There's a lot of open source stuff out there that you can build upon. There's other ways to deploy these servers and network infrastructure that may seem insurmountable, but when we actually just put our fingers on the keyboards and put our brains together, we were able to do it pretty rapidly. So it used to take maybe months and years to deploy. Now it takes hours, days, and even weeks.
Friends, I'm speaking with Aron Wagner. He's COO of Right Forge, a technology infrastructure company, and he's a veteran of 82nd Airborne Division in Iraq. Aron, I've heard lots of people say, you have to build your own platforms. You have to get off Twitter. You have to get off Facebook. You have to stop using Google. You even have to stop using, say, Mozilla Firefox and Thunderbird. There's certainly more alternatives out there than ever before. And yet some people say, well, Gab may be a good thing, but it doesn't have the scale of Twitter. So we're going to stay on for a while. What is it that has uh, companies hesitant to make the step away from big tech, even when they know that big tech is inimical to their values? What's the basis of that fear?
Yeah, a couple points there is the companies that you're just talking about are social media platforms, right? So
Hmm.
these are the live blogs of people sharing their thoughts in real time or images in real time. And it's not necessarily actually, real infrastructure for a business. So a business is more worried about their online asset, whether that's a website, an app, or some proprietary software that they use in-house for logistics or supply chain, whatever it is. All that code needs to be hosted somewhere on a piece of metal that's connected, via wire. And one thing we can do now, and what we've made available is, we have that metal, we have those servers, and we have our own network, to be able to host those online assets. Because at the end of the day, it's really just real estate. And for social media, that's a completely different issue in and of itself, where we're seeing more of these apps launched, and we're seeing maybe some user bases shift. But you're exactly right that Facebook already has, what, 3.5 billion users. That's a massive, massive, massive market of people who are already exchanging ideas. And maybe there will be regulation that comes up to protect people's ability to stay on those platforms, maybe not. But as these new platforms come up, give them a chance, sign on to them. See if you can connect with the people that actually matter to you. Because at the end of the day, it should be community based. I'm more concerned about being able to stay up to date with the people I actually care about.
Right, right. And, I have some friends who are scattered around the world because I've traveled a great deal as a Jesuit. And there is simply the convenience of, quote unquote, everyone is on Facebook. And I used to follow some folks who present on YouTube, and they got banned for a variety of thought crimes. And they said, hey, there are these other platforms, go there. And people seem to be able to not be bothered. Have big tech made themselves so dominant that it's just too hard to push back? Is that a right perception in some people's minds?
I don't think so. I think what we're going to see is a shift in how people are leveraging the internet, because there's been this marketing campaign for years now where these large big tech companies want you to think that they are the internet, right? That they
Mhm.
control the flow of information on the internet. But that's just not reality. Reality is the internet is just like a cup and a string where the server and the network connect the code to distribute the information broadly. And you can host these videos on, a website, and you can share them to the other platforms. And if that platform chooses to deplatform you, at least you still have your video that you can share with your friends, and you can point them back to the video uninterrupted. So I think
Mhm.
there's going to be different types of plugins that are created that are sharing from one to many or many to one, where more people may just have their blog that connect to all the different social media platforms, and they all point to each other. And if any one of them decides to take them off the internet, or off their internet, I should say, then they're still live on the other platforms.
One of my concerns is self censorship. I've had guests on the show who, and they don't want to be demonetized on YouTube because that's part of their business model, for better or worse. So they use subsidy. Well, I can't say X, so I'm gonna say half X. Or I've done videos with content producers where we pretty much just make a commercial on YouTube and said, "Hey, we're a bit too truthful for YouTube. You have to go to this platform, you have to go to that platform." And some people just say, it's just better not to bring it up. Do you have the concern that one of the side effects of big tech's dominance is that people censor themselves just so that they don't have to go through the hassle? Do you worry about that?
I think big tech is absolutely an ancillary problem to the culture issue that we're talking about, with the woke culture of being too concerned, where I have to be worried about what I'm saying because I don't want the mob after me, and I don't want groupthink attacking who I am, or risking maybe my professional career or my relationships because they're going to come after maybe sharing an entire thought that I may truly believe in. And I
Mhm.
think big tech has absolutely contributed to making that worse, right? And I even think a lot of these big tech companies, maybe even at the top, they may not be as woke as their employees, and they may be answering to this woke culture as well.
Do you have any reasonable hopes that there might be some useful regulation or maybe some useful lawsuits coming down the road anytime soon?
I'm always hopeful, right? I had a great experience in the military where I was able to actually navigate some of the bureaucratic institutional issues while I was in, and I'm able to relate that hope, to hoping to see something come out of either DC or at the state or local level to help. But I'm always going to default back to, well, I'm not going to hold my breath until regulation happens. I'm gonna provide a viable solution so that big tech doesn't control the entire market, and that people still have access to the internet. They still have access to be able to host their online assets and their thoughts online without being worried about being deplatformed or censored.
Right. I think people need to be a lot more savvy and see that the internet is a bigger place than just say Google and Facebook and Amazon, and that we have ways of connecting with each other that can't be controlled or diminished by the woke culture, and we have to be willing to push back and say, I have a right to speak my mind. I have the right to tell the truth as I see it, and also, I don't have to surrender to mob mentality. And I think if we insist on that daily, there's going to be an opportunity for progress. Friends, when we come back, I'm going to continue my conversation with Aron Wagner. He's Chief Operating Officer of Right Forge, a full-service technology infrastructure company dedicated to keeping America connected and free. In the next segment, we're going to talk about how big tech may be helping the enemies of freedom. That's an important conversation. Be part of the conversation. Follow what we're following by following us on Gab. That's gab.com. Our channel is The Catholic Current. After the broadcast today, go to thestationofthecross.com, get our resources list, download our audio as podcast. Everything you need to take this conversation to your family and friends, we bring to you. Together, we can take it around the world. We're back in just 2 minutes. Please do stay with us.
After today's broadcast, go to the Catholic Current show page on thestationofthecross.com for info on today's guests, the show resource links, and to sign up for our weekly email of upcoming shows.
Praise be Jesus Christ. This is Father Robert McTeigue of the Society of Jesus, your daily host for the Catholic Current, where we bring Christ to the world and the world to Christ. You're listening to us on the Station of the Cross Studios, your local radio station, and the iCatholic Radio mobile app, where we proclaim the fullness of truth with clarity and charity. We're talking about big tech, whether it's friend or foe. My guest for this segment is Aron Wagner. He's Chief Operating Officer of Right Forge, a full-service technology infrastructure company dedicated to keeping America connected and free. Aron, in the National Interest a little while ago, you wrote an article called Big Tech is Facilitating Jihad Against America and Israel. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, it was actually pretty shocking when I was on the ground forward in theater in Iraq in 2017. I was I was out there supporting the initiative by the Iraqi army to defeat ISIS and move them out of Iraq, and talking with my local counterparts there in country. I was just asking questions, just being friendly and talking to the guys and asking them, well, how do you guys know that ISIS is talking to each other? How are they getting these supplies? And, they kind of laughed and they were like, they're using Facebook Messenger. They're using WhatsApp. Like, that's how they talk. That's how we talk. That's how we all talk here. And I was like, well, that's an interesting anecdote to learn while you're in country that, obviously, that puts Facebook in between a rock and a hard place because they want their platform live. They don't want to be looking in on the user's messaging, but they should absolutely be aware. And it's my hope that they're, helping work with the agencies to, use that hopefully to our advantage. But that, I can't be confident one way or the other. But what I do know is that they were using the platform.
And in your article, you mentioned that shorthand term, the bad guys were using, they had weaponized drones to use against American troops, and they were getting these drones on Facebook. Did I read that correctly? Not on Facebook, Amazon. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, it's an illusion that, I was alluding from the fact that DJI Phantom drones are commercially available on Amazon. And in the same conversations that I was having with the guys on the ground, I'm like, well, how are these guys getting DJI drones? And, they're like, well, you can just order them online, use Amazon. And, I don't think that it was a one-to-one, that they were just able to get onto Amazon and order it directly into Iraq. My guess is that it was layered out and there was some sort of supply chain where maybe in a country where Amazon Marketplace was available, that somebody was ordering the DJI drone and then it was getting trucked in and supplied to the various ISIS outposts throughout the country. From there, then they're attaching different weapons to the drone, right? That's happening in-house with ISIS, where they're modifying that DJI drone with a little 40 mic grenade and like a badminton feather on it, so that when the payload drops, it falls straight down.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. That's well, that's innovative. It seems to me that at least the stories that I've heard, that big tech is rather selective on who they consider a threat, and that apparently the real danger is the right wing extremists who apparently are rioting and burning cities every day in the United States. At least that's the impression that you give. And yet, pedophile groups, really religious, militant, extremist groups, et cetera, explicitly anti-American groups shooting at people in American uniforms, somehow they get a pass. How does that work?
Your best guess is as good as mine, right? I was completely flabbergasted to see the sitting president of the United States, leader of the free world, get kicked off Facebook and Twitter, and these same platforms are allowing the leader of Iran, the largest state sponsor of terror in the world, to continue his speech, but not allow the president. So there's an absolute hypocrisy going on at these platforms. It does not make sense. It does not appear that they truly believe in American interests. They're more interested in their woke culture, and likely whoever's funding and helping to fund their platform.
Aron, I haven't seen this in your writing. Do you have any opinion about big tech's relationship with communist China?
I think that there is a big issue that we need to start looking at and it boils all the way down to supply chain, in my opinion, right? We're heavily reliant on China to build pieces of the infrastructure that's required to have the internet, right? So they're building these different chips and processors and servers, and in some cases they're putting malware and spyware onto these pieces before they're assembled. And it was a decision actually that I was surprised to see with DJI Phantom drones, which we were just talking about, the Pentagon just approving that the DoD can still use DJI drones. I don't know how many times we have to learn the lesson of Chinese manufactured hardware ending up being spyware for us to get the point.
Yeah, that kind of puzzles me too. I think it was Lenin, founding the Soviet Union, had said, when we hang the last capitalist, it'll be with a rope that he sold us. What I don't understand is the readiness of large corporations to work with entities that are objectively evil. I mean, certainly the Communist Party in China is objectively evil. Is there that much money involved that these companies are willing to toss morality out the window?
I think there just has not been enough opportunity for a viable solution. That's, and that's been my focus all year this year, and other entrepreneurs I've been talking to. We are building competitive, viable solutions that at an enterprise level, a corporation can now make the decision of, am I hosting my digital assets with a company that supports and defends a regime like the CCP, or am I going to host my assets on a company that supports and reaffirms American values?
And how can people learn more about your company and the work that you do?
Rightforge.com. We're launching a platform later this week that will have the ability to register and manage domains, launch WordPress sites with performance and security built in to every online asset that's launched or migrated onto the platform. And you can also contact us via rightforge.com for any enterprise infrastructure needs, where we can build you from 1U to full rack co-location, CDN, whatever you need, we can build it.
All right. Well, we'll be linking to Right Forge in our show note today. Aron Wagner, thank you for a very interesting conversation, and thank you again for your service to our country.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Father. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm Jesuit Father Robert McTague, your host here every day at the Catholic Current. Remember, after the broadcast today, go to thestationofthecross.com, get our resources list, download our audio as podcast. Everything you need to take this conversation to your family and friends, we give to you. Take it to your family and friends, and together we can take it around the world. We can do it with you. We certainly cannot do it without you. Be with us every day. There's always a lively guest. There's always an important conversation taking place. Through the intercession of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, may Mary, God bless you, keep you from all harm and every evil, till you reach the happiness of heaven. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, go in peace, and please pray for me.
Thank you for listening to this podcast brought to you by thestationofthecross.com, a listener-funded nonprofit organization. If this podcast has helped you in your spiritual journey, please prayerfully consider donating at thestationofthecross.com by calling 1-877-888-6279 or through our free iCatholic Radio mobile app.